O great mystery, whose voice I hear in the wind, and whose breath gives life to all the world, hear me. I am small and weak. One of your many, many children am I. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunrise. Make my hands respect the many things you have made, and make my ears sharp to hear your voice, and make me wise that I may know the many things that you've hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength not to be greater than my brother, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me always ready to come before you with clean hands and straight eyes, so that when life fades as a fading sunset, my spirit may come before you without shame. I actually have two names. The first was given to me by my parents, who were very Catholic, and it was a Christian name, so it'd be Reuben James Fast Horse. But in Lakota, you would not say the Christian aspect of Reuben or James. You would say Tchashunke Luzaha, which is really his horse is fast. Tchashunke Luzaha comes from my grandfather's name, who was a scout for the US government in the late 1800s, and his name was Frank Fast Horse, but I earned that name through being the eldest son of my mother and father, and they bestowed the name Tchashunke Luzaha. I am from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, and I've lived there most of my childhood years up until 8th grade, and then I moved on to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And I grew up there for my high school years, and then I started to leave the area and travel overseas in my later years throughout my 20s. My earliest memories as a child growing up was hearing the sound of my grandmother, my unchi, lifting off the stove tops of the wood stove and putting wood in. And it'd be cold in the house. It would be so cold that you can actually see your breath. You just roll up in your blankets and you didn't want to get up. You know, we slept on the floor. It was not uncommon that I slept with my brothers and sisters, and we kept each other warm that way. But over time, it would start to warm up because the wood stove would be burning and the metal would get hot. So the smell of coffee, the smell of food cooking, were my first indication of life that was, this is rich, this is healthy, this is good, this is who we are. And it made me happy, it made me feel warm. We didn't have indoor plumbing. We had an old dairy container that was called a slop pail. And that was where all the day's potato peelings and things that were gonna be garbage organically. Instead of going to the toilet, we'd get up and go next to the wood stove, and we knew that when someone was urinating, we didn't look out of respect. My parents were Lakota, Lakole Woglaka. They spoke Lakota, but they didn't speak to us as kids. They spoke to each other as husband and wife because they wanted us to progress and saying, you're going to be in this world, then you need to speak English. Being the eldest of my siblings, every night that I would lay down on the floor and go to sleep, I would hear my mother and my father, my auntie, my uncle, my grandmother, my grandfather. They would laugh in Lakota, they would be jovial, they'd be themselves. Didn't have TV or radio on. They were just enjoying themselves as people, as a family. That was my real schooling, I think, of learning the language among my mother and my father. Parents are the first teachers. And that was just the way life was. That's the way we grew up. We were poor, but we didn't realize we were poor until we went to school and we encountered non-native people. The way they dressed, the way they spoke, all said something different about ourselves. They would make fun of us when we would wear the same clothes twice sometimes. South Dakota was a very racist place. I attended schools that were mostly German, Prussian, Americans. I was the other kid. And so going to school at an elementary level was constantly fighting. On the reservation, a lot of the people, they're not parented as well. So it was very difficult to be around and try to be positive because there were so many children that were foster homed or being raised by a grandmother or grandfather as opposed to their parents. And so the poverty was pretty prevalent in that you can see it everywhere. There's beer cans in the yard, there's dirty diapers. When you live there, you don't really want to be there, but you feel like you have nowhere to go. In the beginning, it was very difficult, and I did not want to be Lakota. I did not want to be Native American. I hated it. I used to say, I'm glad I don't have a Native name. I was in denial. And eventually, when I became 23, I began to realize, what is this Native culture that I have? Because all my life I was Catholic. I didn't care to be Native. I didn't care about the language. I didn't care about the powwows and the dancing or the culture or anything. And I decided, as I grew my hair out, I began to be interested in our ceremonies and traditions, our language. You know, I always waited for someone, some old man to watch me and say, hey son, I've been watching you a long time and I'm gonna take you under my wing. Didn't happen. I became the old man. I had to say, I need to go out there. I need to find out what this, who am I? What does this mean? And I'm glad I did it. It was a drive for me to want to understand self. And what does my language mean? What are the words that I'm singing, the songs that I'm singing mean? The Native music became vital in my 20s because it helped me be enrolled into the language, because you had to learn the language in the music. And when you sing it and you say it are two different things. I began to understand slowly more and more of my language through these old songs and at ceremonies. There's two aspects to our music. There's the Chota Wichasha, which is the singing man. And then there's the Olowa Wichasha, which is the song man. The song man just does ceremony songs. He would never sing it in public unless it was a prayer. And then there's the social man who does social dancing, social songs. And some guys can do both. I eventually became both myself. When I first learned it, I was very scared. And the hard part of singing, just like speaking, is to hear yourself, to accept that this is my voice, this is what I sound like now when I speak or sing it. And that's how Lakota music works. It's to honor and also be compassionate and to remind us of who we are. The look I have is very contrary. This is a picture of a contrarist. It's a heyoka. When he says hello, he means goodbye. When he says I hate you, he means I love you. It's all backwards. He's got the hail marks on his body. He always wears a mask. He's got the forked stick with two feathers. He's got sage medicine, and he's got the lightning down the hip. And so I've kind of played that role all my life. I've been called a heyoka, a sacred clown. And every people on the reservations, every people on the tribes beyond our tribe always have a sacred clown. They're always somebody that is utilized when things are difficult, they come forward and be comical just for a moment, for them to not ponder their situation. I wanted my native people, who are pretty Christian, to see that the Heyoka is not a demon. There's no concept of heaven or hell in our spirituality. There's no such thing as a devil. That's all Christian made. We have a trickster, we have a clown, that's it. And the trickster or the clown gets tricked by his own tricks and teaches us in the whole process. For me to be a Heyoka or portray it was to get people to realize, don't be afraid of our traditions, our culture, our language, our spirituality. The hardest thing that competes against our culture is modern society. Most of the kids are speaking, 99% of the time, their first language is English. As a Lakota teacher, I'm competing against that, utilizing and using whatever we can to get our hands on to adapt our culture for the children to learn, that they can accept. As I always seen myself sitting on a fence, and this side is English, this side is Lakota, and what the old people tell me, it goes through me, a filter, then I can tell the new generation. And what the new generation is doing as children, teenagers, etc., they tell me, and it goes through me again, to tell the old people. And that's kind of, I think, my lot in life, is to be that place, to be this person. That's why I don't fit on the reservation. I can't go home because I'm not going to make an impact. I'm not going to be really versatile, flexible. But coming here and exercising the culture and the language, being able to teach at NYU has opened the doors for me. And even today when I Lakota Wogalaka, or when I teach Lakota, I hear my parents in my head. I hear them speaking the word or enunciating it in a certain way. I'm in between two worlds. I've got one foot in the white world, I got one foot in the Indian world. But that's where I'm supposed to be.